The Pacific Ocean stretched dark and endless beneath the ENS horizon. Captain Park stood on the bridge and watched the monitors show nothing but black water. They were 4,000 meters down, deeper than most ships ever went. Down here, the sun was just a memory. The horizon was not a warship. It was a research and salvage vessel built to map the ocean floor and recover things that had been lost. Old submarines, crashed planes, cargo containers filled with secrets. Had commanded the ship for 3 years, and she thought she had seen everything the deep ocean could offer. She was wrong. Lieutenant sat at the sonar station, his eyes fixed on the screen. He was young, only 26, but he had the best ears in the fleet. He could hear a submarine from 50 kilometers away. He could tell the difference between a whale and a ship just by listening. Right now, he was hearing something that made no sense. "Captain," he said, his voice careful, "I have something strange." Walked over to his station. "What kind of strange?" "Metal, a lot of it, but the shape is wrong." He pointed at the screen where a green blob sat against the darker background. "It is too perfect, too smooth. Natural formations are not like this." Leaned closer. The object was large, maybe 80 meters long. It sat in a trench, half buried in sediment. The sonar showed clean lines and geometric shapes that nature did not create. "Could it be a submarine?" asked. Shook his head. "No submarine has that shape. And look at the depth. Nothing we have can survive down there for long. But this thing, whatever it is, it has been sitting there for a very long time. The sediment layers show at least several hundred years." Felt something cold move through her chest. Several hundred years. Submarines did not exist several hundred years ago. Neither did airplanes or rockets or anything else that could end up at the bottom of the ocean in a perfect geometric shape. "Send down the remote cameras," she ordered. "I want to see it." The remotely operated vehicle took 30 minutes to reach the object. The bridge crew gathered around the main screen, watching the feed in silence. The lights on the vehicle cut through the darkness, showing a floor of gray mud and scattered rocks. Then the object appeared. Doctor, the ship's marine archaeologist, made a sound like all the air had left her body. She was 53 years old and had spent her life studying shipwrecks. She had seen Roman galleys and Spanish treasure ships and World War II destroyers. She had never seen anything like this. The craft sat on the ocean floor like it belonged there. Its surface was smooth and silver without rust or damage. The shape was like a stretched teardrop, elegant and alien. Along its hull, symbols were carved into the metal. They pulsed with a faint blue light, still glowing after centuries underwater. "That is not human," whispered. "That is not from Earth." Nobody argued with her. Nobody could. The evidence was right there on the screen, undeniable and impossible. Picked up the secure phone that connected directly to Naval Command. Her hand was steady even though her heart was not. "This is Captain Park of the ENS Horizon. I need to speak with Admiral immediately. We have found something." The next 6 hours were chaos wrapped in silence. The crew was ordered to tell no one. Communications were locked down. 3 more ships were dispatched to their location, including a destroyer for protection. Admiral himself was coming by helicopter. While they waited, the cameras continued to explore. The craft had no visible damage. There were no impact marks, no cracks, no signs of a violent crash. It had landed gently, carefully, like a bird settling onto water. Whoever piloted this thing had chosen to be here. Lieutenant kept scanning and found something else. "Captain," he said, "there is a power signature coming from inside." Stared at him. "Power, after hundreds of years." "Yes, very weak, but it is there. Something inside is still running." Moved to stand beside. The older woman's face was pale, but her eyes were bright with wonder. "In all of human history," she said softly, "we have asked if we are alone. Now we have an answer, and it has been sitting at the bottom of our ocean, waiting for us to find it." Thought about what this meant. Not just for her or her crew, but for everyone. Every person on Earth would wake up tomorrow in a different world, even if they did not know it yet. The universe had just become bigger and stranger and full of possibilities that no one had imagined. The helicopter arrived at dawn. Admiral was a tall man with gray hair and a face that rarely showed emotion. But when showed him the footage, she saw his hands tremble. He watched the glowing symbols and the perfect silver hull, and he said nothing for a very long time. "We need to bring it up," he finally said. "Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, we bring it to the surface. The world is not ready to know about this, but we need to understand what we have found." Nodded, she looked out at the ocean, so calm and ordinary on the surface. Somewhere below, in the cold darkness, an alien craft waited. It had waited for centuries. It could wait a little longer. But she could not. None of them could, because deep in her bones felt that this discovery was not an ending. It was a beginning. The first chapter of a story that humanity had always dreamed about but never truly believed. The stars had sent them a message. Now they just had to figure out what it said. Joined her at the window. "Are you afraid?" the archaeologist asked. Considered the question. Fear was there, yes, but it was small compared to something else, something bigger. "No," she said, "I am curious. I have spent my whole life looking at the ocean. Now I know the ocean was looking back." Below them in the deep, the blue symbols continued to glow. And somewhere inside the ancient craft, a power source hummed with energy that had crossed the stars. It was patient. It had been patient for 800 years. But its waiting was almost over. The Naval Task Force arrived within 3 days. 12 ships formed a circle around the site. Their crews told only that this was a classified recovery operation. They were not told what they were recovering. They did not need to know. Not yet. Chief Engineer Shin stood on the deck of the salvage ship and studied the plans she had drawn. She was 41 years old and had lifted submarines from deeper water than this. But submarines were familiar. They were human. This thing below was something else entirely. "The weight is the problem," she explained to Admiral and Captain Park. "We estimate the craft is about 3,000 tons, maybe more. At this depth, the pressure makes everything harder. We cannot just wrap cables around it and pull." Admiral crossed his arms. "Then what do you suggest?" Pointed to her diagrams. "Inflatable lift bags. We attach them to a cradle that we build around the craft. Then we fill the bags slowly, very slowly, and let them carry the weight. The craft rises gently, like a bubble." "How long?" asked. 6 days, maybe 7. If we rush, we risk damaging the craft, or worse, dropping it into deeper water where we cannot reach it." The Admiral nodded. "Take whatever time you need, but do it right." The operation began the next morning. Divers went down in specialized suits that could handle the crushing pressure. They worked in shifts, 4 hours at a time, building the cradle piece by piece. The metal frame slowly took shape around the alien craft, cradling it like a giant hand. Corporal Han was the first diver to touch the hull. He was 28 years old, a Navy diver for 6 years, and he had never been afraid of the deep. But when his gloved hand pressed against that silver surface, he felt something he could not explain. A vibration, a hum, like the craft was alive and aware of his presence. "The metal is warm," he reported through his radio. "That should not be possible at this depth. The water is near freezing." On the surface, Doctor recorded everything. "The craft is generating heat. It has been generating heat for centuries. Whatever power source is inside, it is beyond anything we understand." The days passed slowly. The cradle grew. The lift bags were attached, dozens of them, each one capable of lifting hundreds of tons. The divers worked with careful hands and steady nerves, aware that they were part of something historic. Strange things began to happen. On the third night, the communications officer reported that all radio signals had become distorted. Static filled every channel, and beneath the static, some crew members swore they heard patterns, rhythms, almost like music from very far away. Crewmen who worked in the kitchen dreamed of standing on a planet with two suns. She woke up crying and could not remember why. 3 other crew members reported similar dreams, stars they had never seen, skis in colors that did not exist on Earth. The symbols on the hull grew brighter as the lift bags filled with air. What had been a faint glow became a steady light, visible even in the darkness of the deep. The symbols seemed to move, shifting like living things, though the cameras showed they stayed in place. "It knows," Lieutenant said quietly. "The craft knows we are lifting it. It is waking up." On the 6th day, the moment came. Chief Engineer Shin stood at the controls, watching the pressure readings on every lift bag. Captain Park was beside her, and Admiral watched from the bridge above. "Begin final inflation," ordered. The bag swelled, the cables tightened. For a long moment nothing happened. Then slowly the craft began to rise. It moved through the water like it remembered how to fly. The sediment fell away from its hull, and the full shape emerged for the first time in 800 years. It was beautiful, elegant, a masterpiece of engineering from a civilization that humans had never known existed. The ascent took 12 hours. The craft rose meter by meter, leaving the darkness behind. As it climbed, the water grew warmer and lighter. The symbols on the hull pulsed faster, like a heartbeat increasing with excitement. When the craft broke the surface, every satellite in orbit experienced a 3-second blackout. Communications worldwide went silent. Then, just as quickly, everything returned to normal. Scientists around the world noticed the disruption but could not explain it. They had no idea that something had just announced its return to the sky. Corporal Han watched from the deck as the craft floated beside the ship. Seawater streamed off its silver hull. The symbols glowed bright blue in the sunlight, beautiful and strange. He had touched that hull with his own hands. He had felt its warmth and its life. Now it was here in the open air, and the world would never be the same. The transport operation began immediately. The craft was secured to a massive barge and covered with tarps to hide it from any satellites that might be watching. A convoy of ships surrounded it, and they began the journey to Island, where a secure dry dock waited. Admiral established a complete information blackout. Every crew member signed documents promising silence. Phones were collected. Letters were forbidden. The official story was that the task force was conducting routine exercises. Nothing unusual, nothing to see. But the crew knew the truth. They had pulled something from the bottom of the ocean, something that had traveled across stars and chosen Earth as its final destination. They did not know why it had come or who had built it or what secrets it held, but they knew that answers were waiting inside. Captain Park stood on the bridge and watched the convoy move through calm waters. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere under those tarps, an alien craft sat in silence, its symbols still glowing, its power source still humming. "What do you think we will find inside?" Lieutenant asked her. Thought about it. She thought about the dreams her crew had reported, the strange signals, the warmth of the hull. Something was in there. Something that had survived for centuries at the bottom of the ocean, waiting to be found. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I think it wants us to find it. I think it has been waiting for us for a very long time." The convoy sailed on through the night. Above them, the stars sparkled in the clear sky. The same stars that had watched over the craft centuries ago, when it first descended into the waters of Earth. The same stars that would watch as humanity opened the door to a universe they were only beginning to understand. The craft had risen from the deep. Now humans had to find the courage to look within. The dry dock on Island had been emptied of all workers except those with the highest security clearance. Armed guards stood at every entrance. Drones patrolled the perimeter. The alien craft sat in the center of the massive building, still wet from the ocean, its blue symbols casting strange shadows on the walls. 2 weeks had passed since the recovery. Scientists had poked and prodded and scanned every centimeter of the hull. They had learned almost nothing. The metal was an alloy that did not exist in any database. The symbols did not match any known language, human or otherwise. The power source remained a mystery, humming away inside, patient and untouchable. Dr. O arrived on a military helicopter, clutching a briefcase full of research that suddenly felt useless. He was 55 years old, from Seoul National University, and he had spent his entire career preparing for a moment that he never truly believed would come. First contact with alien life. Now it was real, and he felt like a child trying to understand the ocean by studying a single drop of water. Sergeant met him at the helicopter pad. She was 32, the leader of the security team, and her face showed no emotion. "Dr. O, welcome to the project. I must warn you, nothing you have read in the reports will prepare you for what you are about to see." She was right. The craft was larger than had imagined. It filled the dry dock like a sleeping giant, silver and smooth and impossibly beautiful. The symbols on its hull seemed to watch him as he approached, pulsing with that steady blue light. He felt the warmth radiating from the metal even from 5 meters away. "We have tried everything," explained Specialist Ryu, who had been working on the craft since its arrival. He was 36, a linguist and technical analyst, and dark circles under his eyes showed he had not slept much. Diamond-tipped drills, laser cutters, high-pressure water jets, nothing even scratches the surface. Walked slowly around the craft studying the symbols. They were arranged in patterns that suggested meaning, purpose, communication. "What if we are not supposed to cut our way in?" he said thoughtfully. "What if there is a door?" Nodded. "That is what I have been thinking. The symbols respond to touch. Watch." He reached out and pressed his palm against one of the larger symbols. It flashed brighter for a moment, then faded. Nothing else happened. "It recognizes input," continued, "but it does not respond. I believe there is a sequence, a code, like a combination lock." For the next 3 days they experimented. They touched symbols in different orders, different combinations. They tried mathematical sequences, prime numbers, patterns. Nothing worked. On the 4th day, noticed something. The symbols were not random decorations. They told a story. Figures that might be people or creatures similar to people. Shapes that could be planets. Lines that looked like journeys between stars. "It is a map," he said suddenly, "and a history. Look here." He pointed to a cluster of symbols near what seemed to be the front of the craft. "This shows a journey, origin point, destination, and everything in between, if we follow the path in order." Understood immediately. They began touching the symbols in the sequence suggested by the journey. Origin first, then each stop along the way. Finally, the destination, which was unmistakably Earth. The hull shivered. A seam appeared where none had existed before, a perfect line running down the side of the craft. With a soft hiss, a section of the hull swung inward, revealing darkness beyond. Sergeant immediately called for her team. 6 armed soldiers took positions around the opening. Lights were brought, bright beams cutting into the shadows inside. Air samples were taken. Radiation was measured. Everything seemed safe, but safe was a relative term when dealing with alien technology. Captain Park arrived 30 minutes later. She had been the one to find the craft, and she had requested to be present when it was opened. Admiral had agreed. She deserved to see this. The team entered together, and in front, followed by Ian with Sergeant and 2 soldiers bringing up the rear. Their flashlights swept across walls of that same silver metal, covered in more symbols, more patterns, more stories. The interior was pristine. No dust, no decay, no signs that 8 centuries had passed. The air smelled faintly sweet, like flowers that did not grow on Earth. The corridor was tall, at least 3 meters, and the seats they passed were too large for human bodies. Whoever built this craft was bigger than humans. Stronger, perhaps, but they had used doors and chairs and control panels, which meant they were not so different that they could not be understood. The central chamber was circular, dominated by a console covered in symbols and lights. Screens lined the walls, dark and silent, and in the exact center of the room there was a pod. The pod was made of crystal or something like crystal. It was transparent, and through its surface they could see something that stopped them all in their tracks. A body. Not human. The skin was pale gray, almost blue. The head was larger than a human head, with closed eyes that were too big and a mouth that was too small. The body was tall and thin, with long limbs and 4 fingers on each hand. It wore a simple garment that might have been a uniform. "It is dead," Sergeant said, her voice flat. "Has to be after all this time." But Dr. O stepped closer, studying the readouts on the pod itself. Symbols and numbers flickered across a small screen, patterns he did not understand but somehow recognized as vital signs. "No," he said softly, "not dead, sleeping. The pod is keeping it alive, has been keeping it alive for 800 years. He looked at the others, his face pale but his voice steady. "This is not a tomb, it is a lifeboat, and the passenger is still aboard." The team stood in silence, staring at the alien in its crystal bed. It looked peaceful, patient, like it was waiting for exactly this moment when the children of Earth would finally find their way home to its door. Captain Park felt her heart pounding. She had joined the Navy to explore the ocean. Now she was standing in front of a being from another world, separated from first contact by nothing more than a layer of crystal and the courage to make a choice. "What do we do now?" asked. Looked at the alien, at the gentle rise and fall of its chest, at the peaceful expression on its strange face. The question was simple, but the answer would change everything. "We wake it up," he said. "We find out why it came." The decision was not made lightly. For 2 weeks, the world's most powerful leaders debated in secret. Video conferences were held through encrypted channels that even the best hackers could not break. Presidents and prime ministers argued about risks and opportunities, about safety and curiosity, about the future of the entire human species. President Moon Jae-in of South Korea sat at the center of it all. The craft had been found in international waters, but it was her country that had recovered it, her people who had opened it. History would remember this moment, and her name would be attached to it forever. Commander, the military liaison assigned to advise her, urged caution. "We do not know what this being wants," he said during one of their many meetings. "It could be dangerous. It could be carrying diseases. It could wake up angry that we disturbed its sleep. It could also be the greatest opportunity humanity has ever received," President Moon replied. 800 years it has waited. I do not believe it crossed the stars to hurt us." In the end, she made the call. They would attempt to wake the alien. Dr. O assembled a medical team unlike any in history. Human doctors working alongside engineers and linguists, trying to understand alien biology from nothing more than external observations and best guesses. They studied the pod for days, tracing its systems, learning its rhythms. "The pod is designed for revival," explained to the gathered officials. "There are controls here that seem to initiate a waking sequence. The technology will do most of the work. We just need to start it." The revival began on a Tuesday morning. The dry dock had been transformed into a medical facility. Monitors tracked every possible measurement. Soldiers stood ready with weapons that would probably be useless against alien technology, but their presence made everyone feel better. Pressed the sequence of symbols that his team had identified. The pod hummed. The crystal walls glowed brighter. Fluid that filled the chamber began to drain away, revealing more of the alien body. The vital signs on the display began to change, growing stronger faster. It took 72 hours. The alien woke slowly, like someone rising from a very deep sleep. Its eyes opened first, revealing irises that were deep gold in color. It blinked several times, adjusting to light it had not seen in centuries. Then its hands moved, pressing against the crystal, testing its prison. The pod opened with a soft sound. The alien sat up carefully, its movements weak and uncertain. It looked around the chamber at the humans who surrounded it, at the equipment and monitors and worried faces. Then it spoke. The sound was unlike any human language. Musical notes mixed with clicks and hums. But somehow, impossibly, there was meaning beneath the sounds. Felt it rather than heard it, emotions and concepts pressed directly into his mind. Confused, relieved, grateful. Captain Park stepped forward. She did not know why she felt compelled to be the first to speak. Perhaps because she had been the one to find the craft. Perhaps because she wanted the aliens' first experience with humanity to be kindness rather than fear. "Welcome," she said simply. "You are safe." The alien looked at her. Its large golden eyes studied her face, her uniform, her hands that were open and empty. Then it did something that none of them expected. It smiled. The expression was strange on its face but unmistakable, a smile of relief, of connection, of hope finally rewarded after centuries of waiting. Communication was difficult at first. The alien, whom they began calling the traveler, was weak from its long sleep. It could project emotions and simple concepts, but complex ideas required more effort. Specialist Ryu worked around the clock, building a translation system that converted the traveler's mental projections into words on a screen. Slowly, painfully, a story emerged. The traveler was a scientist. Its people had built a civilization that spanned dozens of star systems. They had cured diseases and conquered gravity and learned secrets of the universe that humans could barely imagine. But they had also made war. Terrible war, fought with weapons that could burn planets to ash. The war had consumed everything. The travelers' people had destroyed themselves, every colony, every city, every last hope of survival. The traveler had escaped in this ship, carrying as much knowledge as possible, searching for somewhere safe to preserve what could not be rebuilt. "I came to Earth," the traveler projected, its words appearing on the translation screen. "I had been monitoring your signals for years, radio waves, television broadcasts, your music and your news and your stories. I saw a species that fought but also loved, that destroyed but also created, that fell but always rose again." The traveler's eyes grew sad. "My people forgot how to rise. We only knew how to fall. I hoped that humans would be different. I hoped that you would survive long enough to find me." President Moon Sira visited on the fourth day. The traveler was still weak, still dying from damage that 800 years of sleep had not healed. But it insisted on meeting her, on speaking to the leader who had decided to wake it rather than let it sleep forever. "Why did you choose us?" Moon asked through the translator. The traveler's answer came slowly, each word an effort. "Because you are young, because you still believe in things my people stopped believing long ago. Hope, second chances, the possibility that tomorrow can be better than today." It paused, gathering strength. "I have watched many species. Most burn out quickly, but humans, you keep surprising me. You make the same mistakes over and over, but you also keep trying to be better. That is rare. That is precious." The traveler reached out with one long-fingered hand. Moon hesitated, then took it. The alien's skin was cool and dry like smooth stone, but the grip was gentle, almost tender. "I am dying," the traveler said. "My body has been failing for centuries. The pod kept me alive, but it could not heal me. I have days left, perhaps hours, but I have something to give you before I go. Everything my people knew, our science, our history, our mistakes. I want to pass it to you like a parent passing wisdom to a child." Moon felt tears on her cheeks. She did not try to hide them. "Why us? Why humanity?" The traveler smiled again, that strange and beautiful expression. "Because you remind me of what we used to be, before we forgot, before we fell. You still have time to choose a different path." The golden eyes closed briefly, then opened again with effort. "The galaxy does not need more conquerors. It has had enough of those. What it needs is healers, builders, species that learn from the past instead of repeating it." The traveler squeezed her hand weakly. "I believe you can be those things. Prove me right." Moon nodded, unable to speak. Around her, the team watched in silence, witnesses to a moment that would be remembered for as long as humans told stories to each other. The traveler had crossed the stars searching for hope, and in the depths of Earth's ocean, against all odds, it had found exactly what it was looking for. The traveler spent its final days surrounded by humans. It insisted on this, requesting that the medical team stay close, that Captain Park and Doctor and all the others visit often. After 800 years of sleeping alone in the dark, it wanted company. It wanted connection. It wanted to know that its long journey had not been for nothing. The knowledge transfer began immediately. The traveler used a neural interface, a small device that pressed against the forehead and allowed information to flow directly from mind to mind. Dr. O was the first to try it. He sat beside the traveler's bed, closed his eyes, and suddenly saw everything. Stars, thousands of them. Not the cold, distant lights that humans saw from Earth, but living places with names and histories and peoples who had loved and fought and dreamed just like humans did. He saw the travelers, a planet of silver towers and purple seas. He saw cities that floated in the clouds and ships that danced between galaxies. He also saw the war, the burning, the end of everything that the traveler had loved. When opened his eyes, tears were running down his face. "I understand now," he whispered. "I understand why you came." The traveler nodded weakly. "Share it. Share everything. The good and the bad. My people thought they could keep their mistakes hidden, but secrets have a way of repeating themselves. You must learn from our failures as well as our successes." Over the next 3 days, dozens of scientists used the interface. Engineers learned principles of propulsion that made human rockets look like toys. Doctors discovered treatments for diseases that had killed millions. Physicists glimpsed mathematics that explained mysteries humans had puzzled over for centuries. But they also saw the warnings, weapons that could destroy planets, technologies that had been used to control minds and erase memories, the dark paths that the travelers' people had walked before they fell. "Power without wisdom is poison," the traveler explained during one of their long conversations. "My people had more power than any civilization in the galaxy, but we forgot why we built it. We forgot that technology is only valuable when it serves life, not destroys it." Captain Park visited every day. She would sit beside the traveler's bed and tell it about Earth, about the ocean it had slept beneath for so long, about the whales and dolphins and strange fish that had swum above its resting place. The traveler listened with those golden eyes full of wonder, delighted by every detail. "You love your world," it observed one afternoon. Nodded. "I have spent my life exploring it. There is always something new to discover." "That is good. That is important." The traveler's voice was growing weaker with each passing hour. "A species that still finds wonder in its own home will find wonder everywhere. Never lose that curiosity. It is the most human thing about you." Doctor recorded everything. She filled notebooks with the traveler's words, capturing not just the scientific knowledge but the philosophy behind it. The traveler talked about balance and responsibility, about the duty that came with power, about the importance of remembering that every species was part of something larger. "The galaxy is full of life," the traveler said. "You will meet others as you journey outward. Some will be friends. Some will be enemies. Most will be something in between. The challenge is not to conquer them or fear them, but to understand them, to find the common ground that connects all thinking beings." On the 7th day after its awakening, the traveler asked to see the ocean. It was a difficult request to grant. The traveler was too weak to walk, too fragile to be moved far. But Captain Park made it happen. A transport was arranged, and the traveler was carried gently to a beach on the edge of island. The sun was setting as they arrived. The sky blazed with orange and pink and gold. Waves rolled softly onto the sand, the same waves that had covered the traveler's craft for 800 years. "Beautiful," the traveler whispered. "I chose the right place." The team gathered around the small platform where the traveler lay, and stood closest, with and beside them. Sergeant kept watch nearby, her eyes soft for once instead of hard. "I am glad I woke," the traveler said. "I was afraid when I went asleep, afraid that no one would come, afraid that humans would be gone by the time anyone found me. But you are here, you found me, you listened." Its eyes moved from face to face, memorizing each one. "I will not be here to see what you become, but I believe in you. I believe that you will carry what I have given you forward into the stars. I believe that you will be better than we were." Took the traveler's hand. "We will try. That is all I ask." The golden eyes closed slowly. "Just try, just keep trying, never stop." The traveler died as the last light of the sun disappeared beneath the horizon. It went peacefully, a slight smile on its strange face, surrounded by the humans it had traveled so far to find. The funeral was held 3 days later, a small ceremony on the same beach, attended only by those who had known the traveler in its final days. Captain Park spoke, her voice steady despite the grief in her heart. "It came from beyond the stars," she said. "It crossed distances we can barely imagine. It survived alone for 8 centuries, waiting for us to find it. And when we did, it gave us everything it had. Not because we earned it, not because we deserved it, but because it believed in what we could become." They returned the traveler's body to the ocean. It seemed fitting. The sea had protected the craft for so long, had kept its secrets safe until humans were ready to find them. Now it would keep the traveler as well, one last gift from Earth to a being who had given humanity the stars. 6 months later, Doctor led the team that finally cracked the craft's database. Petabytes of information flowed into human computers, enough knowledge to keep scientists busy for centuries. Star maps showing routes to other worlds, technical specifications for engines that could cross light years, the history of 1,000 civilizations, their rises and falls, their triumphs and tragedies, was there for the activation. She watched the screens light up with alien symbols that Specialist Ryu had learned to read, with images of places no human had ever seen. The traveler's gift, finally unwrapped, turned to her with tears in her eyes. "We did it, we actually did it." Nodded, thinking of the traveler's final words. "Just try, just keep trying, never stop." That was the human way. That was what had caught the traveler's attention across the vast distances of space. Not human strength or intelligence, but human persistence. The stubborn refusal to give up, no matter how many times they failed. Outside the facility, the stars were beginning to appear in the evening sky. The same stars the traveler had sailed across. The same stars that were now waiting for humanity to begin its own journey. They would go, knew that with absolute certainty. They would build ships using the traveler's knowledge. They would set out into the unknown, carrying with them not just technology but a promise to be better, to learn from the mistakes of those who came before, to be the healers and builders that the galaxy needed. The traveler had believed in them. Now humanity had to prove that belief was justified. Looked up at the stars and smiled. The ocean had given up its secret. The universe was waiting, and humanity, for the first time in its history, was ready to answer.